I help pull them along with a lot of those metacognitive practices and the strategies that we've learned, and they respond. They respond well, and they're teenagers, so they're psyched about learning how they work because they're so sort of me-centered that they engage in the work of learning about themselves pretty easily.
So through this process, I would say one of the most rewarding parts was seeing all of my students being so reflective and opening up. So we would watch these videos on mindset and motivational videos, and seeing all of the students from all big variety opening up and saying, yeah, this applies and this is really how it's affected my life and influenced my life, and another student from a whole nother background sharing their experiences, and just creating that classroom culture that we had all mentioned of, being very supportive, and just the level of engagement that I saw on the mindset and the follow-up Fridays was very encouraging and very heartening.
So the language itself gives you a way to, and they picked up on the language pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
But once you have the language, then they're actually building, all of us, no matter what our content area, you try to build mental representations. So, in addition to the fixed and open mindset conversation, which I heard a lot of, if someone was really struggling with even getting started, someone else across the room would say, wow, the blinds of that sensory register aren't really open, or it's not making it past your reactive brain to your thinking brain. These are kids saying this because we talked about it. Mm-hmm. And they sort of have a framework for I see it more to each other. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see it more internalized, mm-hmm. because what you were saying about proficiency types of learners, self-aware is another big part of it. Mm-hmm. And they can see it in their classmates, I find, but my students don't always necessarily see it in themselves.
Well, that's natural.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They can pick out bad writing and everyone else's bad writing, but not their own.
And I think it's great that they call out each other on it, and
yeah.
It's not just me doing it. Mm-hmm. But then when I do it, they'll say, I don't even know how to approach this. Okay, well, let's do a concrete example with some specific numbers, or let's draw a picture. Some of those 6 strategies, they've looked at those strategies, they've tried them, they know, they have a sense for which ones they think work for them and which ones don't, and they sometimes have to be nudged a little bit when they're really stuck. Well, maybe the ones you think work aren't the ones that are working right now, so let's try another one. Mm-hmm. But it's not just go try something. It gives them a specific go do. And the fact that they do it with each other, not just have it done to them, I think is what's making it gain some traction. Mm-hmm.
It almost became like the language of the learning, that mindset, metacognition, motivation, neuroplasticity. It's something that Julie and I, at least here, had thrown around enough with our students, almost I did it in a joking way, like, that's a very closed mindset. But they would begin to echo that language, and they would say it to one another when a kid was struggling, like, I don't know how to do this. They're like, oh, that was a very closed mindset. You should really have a fixed mindset. You should really have a more open mindset, like blah, blah, blah. Or I could go back to them and say, how did you study? Or how did you prepare?
How Julie explained it going into her class, where I augmented my curriculum. So I had a Mindset Monday and a Follow-Up Friday. And the Mindset Monday is where I taught the growth fixed mindset principles. And then Friday we would follow up with a reflective piece of how they had seen that principle during the week, either in class, outside of class, or even outside of school. So that was for a few weeks. And then we had gone and saw Kathleen Kreise, and she had linked this mindset and skill sets to achieve success. So my next step was there are 6 study strategies that Helen had shared with us. And I then, once I got them in the mindset that, yes, you can learn and, have that open mindset, I taught them the 6 skill sets. They had to practice them. That was their homework, to go home and use them to practice the material for the next day. So I had the mindsets, and then I introduced the skill sets. They kept a journal with all of this in it. We cut out pictures and taped them in. That's where the reflections went. Everything was in there. And as a subset, I also did the metacognitive piece in my curriculum. So at the end of a unit, I would give them a little reflection form to fill out on what I as a teacher did well to help them to succeed, what I did that made the learning difficult, what they did as a student that helped them succeed, and what they as a student did that made their learning difficult.
That ability for kids to pool, like we've talked a lot about individuals in our classroom, but there's a real communal opportunity for students to share what they know and to share what works best for them, and then to provide one another suggestions for moving forward. Like, so here's what I see that's really working for you, here's what I see that's not, have you tried? And offering one another suggestions that I, in terms of my learning brain, had not thought of. So I think that's, at least that's one important takeaway for us, is that yes, it is individual and it's about self-awareness, but it's not devoid of that community piece. It becomes cultural pretty quickly within the classroom. And I keep it as background in my classroom, like there's language that supports it, there's images that support it, but it creeps in even when, it's on documents that I give them, I use the language of it, they see it all the time. So when my students, when we talk about strategies for approaching a task, midway through we reevaluate, is the plan working? And then we throw out there, so what is working for you? Or, so Abby is really struggling. Do you have suggestions? What might help her? What alternatives? Because oftentimes I think our kids get stuck on one strategy, or we offer as teachers the strategy that works best for us, right? And throw that out as the suggested or the preferred mode for approaching a task or for studying. And it's doesn't always coincide with the students' learning.
Pointing out that they've gotten comfortable, or that they're giving up, or that they have a fixed mindset. Me doing that, or another teacher. What I'd like to help them do, and I think is important to help them do, even more important than the math that I can teach them, is actually make it self-talk. Make it be the voice inside their head that lets them have that conversation, and the side of the conversation that you need to win out to be resilient and to be persistent, and to push through it and get that learning to happen.